Good evening and welcome to Statistical and Probability Mathematical Reasoning with Courtney, Candace, Gary, and Jamie. Oops. Gary, how would you describe half-life medications?
I would describe it as time it takes for the connection of the drug in the plasma or the total amount in the body to be reduced by 50%. And that means that after one half-life, the concentration of the drug in the body will be half of the starting dose. It is good to know half-life of medications so you don't end up taking too much in a short period of time. A lot of people have accidentally overdosed by taking too much medication in a short period of time, and that can be fatal. I feel that everyone should learn about medication half-lives.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Gary.
Thank you.
Hey, Jamie, what is asymptote? Can you tell us what an asymptote is?
Asymptote.
An asymptote is a place on a graph where the data would be undefined. The graph will never be able to touch zero. At zero, it will be undefined because we keep dividing it in half. So the line keeps getting closer to the x-axis, but it will never touch it. The asymptote in the graph we made is a horizontal asymptote on the x-axis.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Candace, how do you determine the half-life of a medication? Why is it important?
Well, by using the trend line equation, you'd be able to plug in any number that would represent your hours, and therefore it would allow you to know how much medication is left in your system, which, as you already stated, is very important for us to know so that we don't accidentally overdose ourselves or others.
Thank you.
Thank you, Candace.
You're welcome.
Courtney, what can you tell us about the half-life medication charts?
So we've been talking about the half-lives of medication, and I use numerical information for oxycodone in your system per hour to translate into the graphical form. And the half-life medication chart shows an example of how many times a number can be divided in half. And like you were saying, Jamie, there with the asymptote, you never reach zero on that x-axis, which means there will always be a trace amount of medication in your system that can't be broken down. And so, like, even after 18 hours, you still have 0.3125% of oxycodone in your system. And the dosage is much closer than that. And so, like Gary's talking about, you know, we're in an epidemic here of people overdosing on medication because they don't realize that there still is medication in their system, and then they're just adding and adding and adding when they need to understand this, like we're all saying, because it never reaches zero. It's never out of our system.
I think we're all guilty of that, though.
Yeah. Yes.
Jamie, can you explain why it's important to know the half-life of medication?
Yes. It's very important to know what the half-life of a medication is due to each medication having a different half-life. For example, Klonopin takes 160 hours to be completely out of your system compared to naproxen that takes 70 hours. Knowing each medication's half-life lets us determine how much medication is still in our bodies after a certain number of hours. You could overdose if you don't know how much medication is left in your system and take more of the medication. This information would be very beneficial if you're having to give medication to, like, a child or the elderly.
Thank you.
Good point there about the kids or the elderly too.
Yes.
Right.
Gary, based on what you know, how would you explain a trend line?
A trend line that is used to represent behavior of set data to determine if there is a certain pattern. There are two main purposes of a trend line. One is determining if a set of points exhibits a positive trend, a negative trend, or no trend at all. The second purpose is predicting an unknown for future data points. A trend line is an analytical tool used most often in conjunction with a scattered plot to see if there is a relationship between two variables.
All right, thank you.
Hey, Jamie, how would you use a trend line equation to determine the half-life of medication?
Well, a trendline equation can be used to determine how much medication is left in our bodies after a certain number of hours have passed. For example, by using the trendline equation, we learned that when we take 800 milligrams of ibuprofen, after 3.8 hours, we still have 200 milligrams in our system. We can actually use any value for a number of hours to determine the half-life. Candace, what is the third leading cause of motor vehicle accidents?
The third leading cause is driving under the influence of alcohol and drugs, narcotics, and prescriptions is the third leading cause of accidents because they all can reduce the driver's coordination, concentration, and perception behind the wheel, and the injuries caused by can be devastating. According to our charts and graphs, the 70 plus years has they increased more than any other age group within the year, and 19.9% of that was based off of medications, off of others taking medications, while only 2.4 were due to people that were on not only medications and alcohol, but also cannabis and other recreational drugs. You had 17.8% that were due to alcohol by itself, and then overall you had 59.9% that were negative and had no substances within their systems at all. But that is the third most leading cause of disasters that I was able to research.
Okay, thank you, Candace.
You're welcome.
You got through it. You did a good job. That was a lot of information to give us. Gary, what is the function of statistics?
Statistics help in providing a better understanding and exact description of phenomenon of nature. They help in the proper planning of statistical inquiry in any field of study. Statistics help in collecting appropriate quantitative data. They also help in presenting complex data in a suitable tabular, diagrammatic, I'm saying, and graphic form for easy and clear comprehensive of data. Statistics helping in drawing valid inferences along with a measure of their reliability about the population parameter from the sample data. Sorry.
You're good. That's a mouthful. I'm telling you, these math words are hard to wrap your tongue around, if you will. All right, let's move on and learn some more about statistics.
Candace, what is BAC?
BAC. Okay, to break it down, it actually stands for blood alcohol content, and it's used to define the intoxication and provides a rough measure of impairment. By using the formula, well, I won't break down the actual formula, but it's all based off of your weight and your size and whether you're a male or a female. And it also is determined by how much you had to drink and what you had to drink. That basically once they factor in all that, they can tell you how much where your blood level is. And I also found out that it takes 3 hours for a person that weighs about 100 pounds in order for them to reach the blood alcohol level of 0.08.
Yeah, I found all that interesting.
I know, that was really interesting. Like in about like how hydrated you were, all went into play
Right.
of what your blood alcohol level
Right.
could be at. And I just had never thought of that before. I just thought everybody was, on this even playing ground, but I guess not.
Yeah, I thought it was weird because there was it was a difference between whether you were a woman or a male.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Mhm.
Why
And
is it
then,
always have to be like that?
it takes 3 hours for a 100-pound person. It takes 4 for a 140-pound person.
Wow.
Yeah, there's a lot of factors that play into it.
Right, right.
Mm-hmm.
Really
Courtney.
interesting. We could do a whole presentation just on this.
Right.
All right, let's move on to the next slide.
What is the information you were able to gather about GMOs?
So the information shows a conclusion based on a probability of sample fields of crops modified by biotechnology. The corn and soy crops start to dominate our foods, and they become the main ingredient in a large percent of our consumers' diet. Probability is defined as the measure of the likelihood that an event will occur. And so, as you can see from the graph, we just keep adding and adding and adding more soy or keep adding more biotechnology to our corn and soy products. And then those just keep those are like the number one ingredients in most of our foods. And so they become fillers, and then we're just not getting the nutrients that we need. We're just getting fillers in our diet. And I recently was watching a doctor talking about these gut foods that make our guts not healthy, and corn is one of those. And I'm like, oh no, we like corn, but it makes you have a leaky gut, which y'all will have to research. It was really interesting, and it'll make you think about what you're putting into your body and what maybe it's doing to your digestive tract, and even your behavior and stuff, which we do talk about here shortly. So anyways, that was the information I was able to gather from that there's a probability of the increase of our crops having more biotechnology. So thank you. Jamie, what evidence did you find that links autism to GMOs?
Well, through gathering information on genetically modified crops and autism, we can see that there is a correlation between the two. We see by the data that was gathered from 1990 to 2010 that when the number of GM crops rose, the number of autistic children increased also. According to the data, there were no reports of autism in 1990, 1991, 1993, and 1994. And during these years, the number of GM crops were also low. The highest number of autistic children was reported in 2009, which was also the highest year for GM crops. And like you were saying, Courtney, there is a lot of research and information that's came out about linking GM crops to health.
Right. Thank you, Jamie.
It was very interesting to learn all about that.
It is.
Realize it.
I know.
Is there any, Candace, is there any correlation between bowel disease and genetically modified corn?
Well, to me, this is my personal belief, okay? To answer that, I believe that you would need more information. Looking at the chart does make you believe, because there is rise at the same time. So it does give you a valuable, reason to say cause is there for the right effect. But any company can intentionally mislead you. They can use all different types of data. They can use only specific groups to,
Mhm.
they can pinpoint specific groups that lean more toward the information that they want to put out. So, I mean, I think really in order to justify this, you would need to know more things like their diet, their daily diet, their daily contact that they may be able to come in contact with other chemicals or things of that nature. You would need to know a little bit more in order to just say that yes, this is a proven fact. For me, it's not.
That's a good point, Candace, that we probably are not being exposed to all the variables here,
Right,
that they're just giving us a specific variable. And that's a really good point that, I really didn't even think about when I
right.
looked at this. I was just like, look at those crops messing us all up.
I mean, we learned in previous work that she had us to do about bias.
hmm
So, I mean, companies can pinpoint whatever customer base that they want to attract in order to spread what they want, what's going to benefit their company.
Right. You're so right. Thank you, Candace. Very informative.
Courtney, excuse me, with the information from the GMOs graph, what is the probability of an event occurring within a sample group of children with autism?
So like you were showing us too, Jamie, you can see from the two graphs, I only showed one graph, sorry, the one graph that the crops became more modified over the years. And in my opinion, there is a correlation and causation effect going on. The government allows for a certain number of herbicides or insect resistance to go in our crops. And correlation indicates that one event is the result of the occurrence of the other event, where causation is the relationship between cause and effect. This means that just because there is a relationship between two variables, it's not always the cause of the other. As the crops have become more genetically modified and implemented into our foods, the number of children with autism has increased. And so for us to say that there's not a correlation or a causation going on, I think we would just be turning a blind eye. But of course, the government does not want you to question that, and they're going to say that that's not going on, and that those other variables are coming into play. And they might, I mean, you might have, genetics at play here with autism or, hyper ADHD or ADD or, some of these other things. Of course, you have to put in those other natural variables. But what we're talking here is about unnatural variables. And I think there's definitely a correlation and a causation going on. So that was the data of an event occurring. That as these crops become more modified with the GMOs, we will more than likely see a more increase of autism in our children, as it is doing. So,
Gary, what is the main idea of a financial report?
The idea of a financial report is to convey the activities and financial performance of a business. Financial reports can include balance sheets, income statements, and cash flow statements. Financial reports are used by investors, market analysts, and creditors to evaluate a company's financial health and earning potential. These reports can definitely make or break a company. It also lets a business know what they can improve on. Thank you.
Thank you. So, Candace, when we're looking at financial reports and stuff, and we need to know our finances, is it really worth us getting a raise?
Well, it just depends on what tax bracket you're in.
Okay.
Because as we went through and did our charts, if you look at it, the single person, they got a $2,000 raise, okay, but their take home, I think, was like about $1,400 in the end. Their tax brackets did interchange though as well. The head of household, they got a $2,000 raise, but they missed out on about $8,000 coming back to them. Okay. a person that was married filing head of household, yes, they were able to incur 1,600 more to take home. So it just depends. Um, the more money you make, the more taxes that you'll end up paying. And like I said, it just depends on where you fit in on the tax bracket.
Okay, thank you. It's a bit low, so.
Jamie, can you explain? Sorry.
Oh, did I mess up here?
No, that
No.
was my fault.
Oh, okay. All right, so we're asking you, Jamie,
Mm-hmm.
can you explain what federal and state tax dollars are spent on?
Yes. Most state and federal taxes we pay go towards healthcare. Our federal tax dollars spend 27% on healthcare compared to 40% of state taxes. Social Security is 24% of federal tax dollars, and 20% of state taxes goes towards education. Federal taxes only pay 2% of education. Excuse me. None of our state tax dollars go towards defense, but 16% of our federal tax dollars are spent on it.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I found this to be pretty interesting myself.
Right.
And I guess I was kind of, oh, I keep doing this with our slides tonight. I'm so sorry, everyone watching. But I was glad that we at least spent 20% here on education and higher education. I was like, okay, like at least we're trying. We're trying to get people. Okay, Jamie, you like passed it through the computer.
Sorry.
You know, we're trying to educate our community because that is a way that we're going to be able to improve.
Right.
Yeah, and I think some of these are different too, because certain things are paid by the state, and then you know, there's certain things that are only paid by the state, and then other things are paid through the federal government. So
that's a good point too. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Oh. What I do here? Let's just go there.
Are we on? Are we asking?
Look, I just keep messing things up. People
Right.
at
I
home,
think it's Candace.
help me tonight. Candace.
Yes.
Oh my goodness. How are my local tax dollars spent?
Okay. Well, as I was doing some digging, according to our charts that she led us to, our federal income tax dollars are mostly consumed by Medicare, Medicaid, and market subsidies, whereas most of my Arkansas taxes are distributed to the public schools. You got 66.29%, and the federal only gives 2% of that to education.
Right.
And I was really upset by that because I thought that education should have got a little bit more.
Right.
Now,
Right.
I don't have a problem with giving to everybody else, but I mean, if you're going to spend my tax dollars, at least let me have some input on where it goes.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, and I didn't realize that there was so much federal and state taxes going towards healthcare.
Right. I mean,
Both of them.
because if you look at the federal, they give I don't remember the amount, but they give a little bit to education and healthcare. But like my Little Rock tax dollars, the hospital is only getting like 8.86%. Why? We need to save the kids.
Right.
So it was a little disappointing when I actually looked at the breakdown of what was given. I mean, yes, I agree with giving to the schools more so, but I mean, the federal government is already giving them stuff.
Right.
education for some of the programs that they have. Most of the programs that schools deal with now are federally funded.
Hmm.
Okay, so why do we still have to give them such a bulk of the state and not give a little bit more to the hospital? So it was disappointing to me.
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes knowledge is, we don't want it because we're
Right.
like, no, I'd rather just be ignorant and not know that.
Right.
Well, thank you.
Gary, can you assess the importance of a budget?
Yes, a budget allows you to create a spending plan for your money. It ensures that you will always have enough money for things you need and things that are important to you. Following a budget will also help keep you out of debt. Extending your budget out into the future will tell you how much money you need to save up. Using a realistic budget to forecast your spending for the year can really help you with your long-term financial plan.
Thank you, Gary. I know I'm really bad about not doing a budget, but I'm getting a little bit better since she's been having us do this.
I'm guilty. I'm guilty. I'm guilty.
Oh my goodness. But I'm like,
Me
I guess
too.
we're not ever going to get ahead if we don't do some kind of budget and put
Right.
a little bit away at a time.
Yeah, it was eye-opening, like doing the budgets and realizing what the majority of my money is going to.
Oh
I
goodness.
think it was all a slap. It gave all of us a slap in the face.
It did.
Yeah.
Yeah. She's like, go ahead and check yourself, people. All right. Thanks for the definition and the explanation of a budget, Gary.
Jamie, based on what you know, what city would you choose to live in?
Well, after gathering all the information on the 3 cities that I picked, I think that the best one would be Honolulu. Because when researching the cost of living for the city, I found that after it, I would have the most money left over after expenses. The
Okay.
average salary, which is for a social worker, which is what I want to become, is around $68,400 there. And I also found that expenses aren't that high for the city. So my monthly income would be $5,766, and I would still have around $1,200 after, all my expenses were paid each month.
You made me want to go to Honolulu now.
I know.
Yeah, let's all go.
No.
But it was interesting when I was pulling up research about it that it's the cost of living isn't that high there, but some of the goods are a lot higher, like eggs apparently are really expensive there, and just different products.
Well, you'll have to just have little chickens
I thought that was odd.
so that you can have your eggs and not have to pay
Right.
an insane amount. So, all right, we're all going to Honolulu.
Right.
Okay.
Janice, what kind of mathematics do you see in exploring cities of interest for your future?
All right, so like Jamie, I looked at a couple of different places and then just gave y'all some demographics on that because I don't know where we're going to end up. And so to begin my search, I used statistical data that deals with the data collection, organization, analysis, interpretation, and presentation of the data. So I used a statistical population like Hot Springs or Vancouver, Washington, or St. Albans. I'm not sure how to say that, Vermont. To compare the cost of living, which cost of living is tied to our wages. So based on the salary of a private investigator, which is what I want to be, is around $60,000 a year, and that's the average basically worldwide. So which then allows me to see that it's a lot more expensive to live in St. Albans, Vermont than it is in Hot Springs. and just kind of interesting. I mean, Hot Springs is fairly low compared to, you know, other people or other places, and but it's so populous. Is that the right way to say it? And then St. Albans, Vermont, is not populous, and it costs like 3 times as much as it costs to live here in Hot Springs. So I don't know why it costs that much. Maybe because they're closer to Canada. I'm not sure. But anyway, so it was interesting to use the statistical population and statistical data to compare those different cities.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Gary, what is the function of the distribution curve?
The curve will show you often an experiment will produce a particular result. The curve is systematical and bell-shaped, showing the trials will usually give results near the average. The curve will also occasionally deviate by large amounts. The width of the bell indicates how much confidence a person can have in the result of the experiment. That means the narrower bell, the higher the confidence.
Okay, thank you.
All right. And Courtney, what did you find most profound in your crime statistics?
All right, so I looked at the same cities, Hot Springs, Vancouver, does anybody else know how to say that? Because I'm going to feel like St. Albans. Let's just go with that. So crime statistics can be deceiving in that the range of the population varies. The data is collected over 1,000 people, but it's not biased to a city of only 1,000 compared to a city of 10,000. So the range is the difference of the largest and smallest term in a set. For example, Hot Springs, Arkansas, you have a 1 in 13 chance of being a victim of a crime, or 74 per 1,000 victims report a crime. In Vancouver, Washington, you have a 1 in 269 chance of being a victim of crime, or 4 per 1,000 victims report a crime. The population of Hot Springs is roughly 37,000 compared to Vancouver at an estimated 162,000. This chart holds true that the crime rate is higher in Hot Springs, but our population is also smaller, and so that's where that range effect comes in, because we have a smaller population and they're taking the same 1,000, you know, our crime rate seems to be higher when in actuality it's comparable to Vancouver, because they have so many more people. Of course you're less likely to be a victim. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So it may appear that Hot Springs has a higher crime rate, but the overall numbers being compared are not equal. The crime rate formula uses the range to give you those ratios. So like Candace was saying, just as companies will try to deceive you, cities will try to deceive you because they want you to move there. You know, they want you to think, oh, it's so safe here. The crime rate's super low. So you really have to look at that information, see all the variables that go into play with it. And, you know, I think other than maybe certain parts of like Texas, you know, near the border, of course, there are areas of cities that probably themselves even have a higher crime rate than the overall. So what are we really looking at here? So that's what I found to be kind of profound, is that, again, we might be deceived by what we're looking at. So, so yeah, does anybody else have anything else they want to add about statistics or probability, financial reports, anything?
No.
No, I think we covered everything.
I think so, and I thank y'all for being on this team with me, and I will see y'all next time, and have a good night.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
All right, bye.